Hey, what's happening, guys? Thanks for joining us on Swan Signal Live, you Sats fans out there. It's Friday. Time to hang out with the boys and talk some Bitcoin. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to Mara for helping to support the show and for securing the strongest and most secure internet network in the world. That's the Bitcoin network. Shout out to Mara. Guys, what's going on? Steven, how you doing?
Doing great, man. I mean, it's been such a thrilling month and a half. I mean, never a dull day. I think since November, just an exciting time to be in Bitcoin, and no shortage of things to be plugged in about.
It's getting hard to keep up, man.
Oh, yeah, it's nonstop. It's nonstop. The world is changing, and I actually think that's people don't fully understand actually how much the world has changed for Bitcoin, both in the US, globally. We'll probably get into that here, but it's huge. It's material. I mean, I'm hearing big things.
I know you're plugged in. Brandon, happy Friday, buddy. How's it going?
What's up, guys? Great intro, Jason. Brady. Yeah, I have to make fun of Steven there I'm plugged in. I'm hearing things. What's the meme?
Yeah.
What's the meme? I'm hearing things. It's big if true.
Yeah. You gotta.
It is big if true, man. It is big if true. Now, what's the source? I mean, it could be that I made it up, but
it came to me while I was on a walk. Yeah, my opening thoughts here. I agree on the theme of the big history here. We are living in the future. The future is here, and it is unequally distributed. You walking down, talk to normal people on the street, they know nothing about Bitcoin. Even the Bitcoiners, I don't think, who are invested in this thing for 5 years but aren't glued to Twitter every day, I don't think they're fully updated on how much we're winning right now. And so I think the future is bright. It's not priced in, and we have a long, bright future ahead.
Well said. Bullicious. John, what's happening, man? Happy Friday to you.
Yeah. What's up, guys? So firstly, I got to say, Brady, your choice of promotional tweet material was phenomenal. The Rounders GIF just brought me back to
that movie, man.
high school. Oh, dude, it's so good. There was a point in time where I honestly could have come close to quoting it start to finish.
Yep.
In high school, there was a phase we had where just school ended, we immediately went to play poker, and we would turn the movie on in the TV in the room while we played poker. So incredible movie. But yeah, you also said, I think you were the one who said, Brady, it's getting hard to follow. And I feel that way as someone who works in the Bitcoin industry. And, I'm tasked with following all the things going on. That's part of the job. It's not but pre-2022, I followed Bitcoin, but I had a day job that had nothing to do with Bitcoin. Saying it's hard to follow then is kind of understandable, right? To say that it's kind of hard to follow when you're in the Bitcoin industry just speaks to how much stuff is happening week in and week out, and in the last month and a half alone. So if you're out there finding that it's hard to follow, yeah, you've got some company.
I knew we were friends. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
Sorry, just to tie into Rounders really quick. Also obsessed. All I did was play poker after sports in school and whatever in high school. How many Bitcoiners were poker freaks back in the day?
I played a lot of poker in college.
80% more. Yeah,
probably.
It's just such a great game. Texas Hold'em is the only pure game left.
Yeah. And the thing, markets in many ways have more to do with poker than they do price to earnings ratios, in my opinion. I think people don't quite grasp this. People want to believe that financial markets are this solid, seemingly institutional, credible, approaching almost physics in some of the dynamics. There's this real impulse, I think, in a lot of TradFi to approximate the movements of financial markets in some sort of almost physics or hard science way. And so you get all these ratios, you get all these price to earning ratio, markets just track earnings and valuations and all this stuff. And yet the question you have to ask, and it's oh yeah, if stock prices are just a function of their cash flows, why have valuations expanded? Why have price to earnings ratios expanded so much in the last decade? is what's the right 30x multiple, 20x multiple? They hide behind the like inconsequential, like in the just like the vagueness of these multiples that like it's like, oh yeah, it's a function of earnings. Multiply it by a random number every time. What is it really tracking?
Inflation. Is that what you're getting at, Stephen?
No, honestly, not even. Like that's a part of it, but it's also just speculation. I mean, just literally people's perceptions of the stock. If people think Apple's going to do good in the future, they buy more Apple stock. Like it expands from a 20x to a 25x. What does that multiple explain?
Right, but I mean, what's the underlying cause of that? People want to buy Apple stock at increasing PEs because
they're forced to invest.
They're forced to invest to avoid inflation, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that is the other thing is like what people don't get is like there's just a forced investment component. If you have money, you must invest that money. There's not like another place to go. So it doesn't matter what valuation really. I mean, like obviously it matters in some ways. I'm not saying it can support infinite valuations or anything, but like, you know, if there's nothing else to buy and the average multiple has increased from a 20 to a 25x on the S&P, well, what do you do? Do you sit in cash? You can't sit in cash. So you buy.
You keep drive it up. Before we dive into the agenda, there's a couple of comments that I just want to shout out, and I think they're good learnings for everyone. All right, new to BTC. There's going to be and I'm going to read it out for the podcast listeners, but a lot of people coming into Bitcoin obviously over the next 12 months. So the Artisan Tube says, I want to buy a bit of Bitcoin, throw in a good chunk out of the gate, and hold that in cold storage while continuing to buy each month. This is exactly what we built Swan to do. So this is the right strategy. Throw in what you can afford right now, buy a big chunk up front, and then put in $10 a week, $40 a week, whatever you can. And that's all automated with Swan. So check out swan.com or Swan Bitcoin app in the App Store, and that should get you what you need. We also have tons of education about how to withdraw to custody and which wallet you might want to choose. We have some opinions there. So great question. You're on the right track. Ryan asks if we're of the opinion that one sat may be equivalent to $1 someday. Are we going to, what we like to call sat cent parity is 100 sats equal to $1, or sat dollar parity. So let's riff on this just a little bit. Sat cent parity puts us at, I think, it's pretty high, right? Sat cent parity's one. Where is it? 1 million or 10 million?
It's
I'm getting my order. Yeah, 1 million. Okay, I was getting my orders of magnitude off. Right, 1 million. $1 million Bitcoin. So seems
there's 2.1 quadrillion satoshis.
Correct.
So if each was $1, that would be a pretty large number. I could see sat cent parity for sure.
That's $1 million Bitcoin. We're probably headed in that direction. I think that's where expectations are, somewhere in the next 5 or 6 years, probably. But yeah, to get to dollar sat parity would be taking, I mean, what's the total money supply in the world, or like including derivatives and stuff? I don't even know if it gets to that point. So yeah, probably not. But still, it probably will be worth more than a penny. I think at some point, maybe 5-10 cents per sat. So yeah, it's not too late. It's not too late. There's a lot of upside left. So stick in the game. All right. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Artisan Tube. Appreciate the comments. We might throw some up throughout the show. So should we jump into the agenda, guys? We have a lot to talk about. Like I said, it's hard to keep up right now. There's so much just flying at us from every direction. Bitcoin is the hot topic in the world, across the globe. Bitcoin is the hot topic for people in finance and government, especially. So let's just take a look at a couple of clips from this week. First up is Representative French Hill. He is the incoming chair of the House Finance Committee, talking about Bitcoin.
We need a market structure for digital assets. We don't have rules of the road. Under Chairman Gensler, we had just regulation by enforcement. This is not helping America succeed, not helping technological advance, both in publicly traded companies and in financial services. So that is the top priority for us. And our majority leader, Steve Scalise, has it on his first 100 days of the House is to move a regulatory structure bill for digital assets. And I also believe a dollar-backed payment stable coin under U.S. law as well. But I am certain of this, that we need a fair-minded, fit-for-purpose regulatory structure for digital assets in this country.
Yeah, I think this just speaks to the priority of this administration, this government, right? This is a top priority, and that's awesome to hear confirmed.
The vibe shift is real. It is upon us. I mean, you can't look at like that's the takeaway from the last few weeks. It's just soundbite after soundbite of across the board sweeping changes in how this administration is relating to the whole industry. And let me make a comment here, because a lot of people get kind of twisted up around the fact that they talk about crypto or they talk about stable coins or they say the word blockchain. For people outside of this world, they don't make the same firm distinction that we do between Bitcoin and crypto and these other things. And it's often just a blanket term, right? Like they're just kind of coming in broadly. And so both, I think there's a lack of specificity when they say that. And also like, yeah, they're going to do stablecoin regulation. They're going to do these things. And like, that's fine. It's a rising tide lifts all boats moment. And you just have to realize that we've swung from this incredibly hostile administration to one that is here to support the industry and you know, individuals that own Bitcoin, you know, in at least the ways that are appropriate. And it's, I mean, it's a game changer.
We've got another one here from Giancarlo, Chris Giancarlo, who was the chair of the CFTC in the first Trump administration. This one's a couple minutes long, but I really love it because it's just an incredibly clear thinking about Bitcoin. So just a great example of how these people are starting to really get it.
Chris Giancarlo is the former chairman of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission under Donald Trump. Good morning to you. Thanks for coming in here. Here's a Treasury document calls Bitcoin digital gold. We've heard that before, okay? That's one element. Next one, Elon Musk praising El Salvador's Impreso crypto reserve. All right, so that's an interesting relationship. Why is this happening now? What does the incoming administration see as favorable for Bitcoin?
There's a number of reasons why this is happening. One is because the technology has come about. We finally reached the stage of the internet where we can go beyond storing information on the internet to actually storing things of value. Things of value like wealth, things of value like ownership of a home. This is what they call the new wave of the internet, an internet of value, and the technology's there. In fact, when you think about what they really are is protocols that allow us to store value on the internet, as opposed to the way we've been doing it in human society for only the last 400 years, storing value in basically an IOU from a financial institution. And as we've learned in the last 40 years, during which the internet has never gone down, banks have failed, including 3 banks of America's top 20 just in the last 3 years. So moving value storage on the internet is an idea whose time has come. Bitcoin, which is the most widely known and has had the most spectacular success, might be the equivalent, as you said, Bill, to digital gold. In the previous world, the analog world, what cash was to gold, in the digital world, digital money may be to Bitcoin. Let me give you another example. We live in a time where 1 out of every $4 has been printed in the last 5 years. We are actively debasing our currency. And at the same time, Bitcoin has, into its design, programmed scarcity. You can never have more than a certain amount of Bitcoin. And so the dollar is depreciating, Bitcoin is appreciating. Quick factoid. In 2018, the average American home would have cost you over $260,000 and over 400 Bitcoin. Today, the average American home is now over $460,000. It would cost you less than 5 Bitcoin. What's been the better investment over the last 5 years? Bitcoin or dollar?
He ends with what's been the better investment over the last 5 years, Bitcoin or dollars? I think the more accurate way to express that is Bitcoin or real estate.
That was my first time seeing that clip, and like, I need to buy some more Bitcoin.
It's pretty. I mean, he's pretty much there. Like
The
it's
internet has
pretty close.
never gone down. Banks have gone down. Banger. That was amazing.
Yeah, good stuff.
Like really quite good. And so this is the former chairman of the CFTC, and he's now. Did he get a role in this? He's coming into this administration, right? Or did he get passed over for the czar position? Let me check. I'll look that up.
Also, quick correction. Is it 1 sat to USD is the math we were doing and moving the zeros? Yeah, Brady, looks like you got the same. If we were saying 1 sat to USD, that would be 100 million Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right.
But Bitcoin would be worth the quadrillion amount as a network.
The market cap would be a much, much larger number.
So by comparison, Saylor's calling for $13 million Bitcoin in his model by 2045, I believe. Yeah, 2045. So there you go. More than $1 per 100 sats.
Yeah.
Can we make a side comment about the Giancarlo one? He's saying Bitcoin doesn't go, the internet doesn't go down, banks go down, whatever. It just reminds me of the fact that people in every echelon of society who are paying attention to Bitcoin seem to get their hands dirty on Bitcoin Twitter, and they absorb the memes, they regurgitate the things that Anons post. And that's a really, really powerful thing. Like we actually are memeing this thing into existence.
100%. I was thinking along similar lines. Like if you're a Bitcoiner who has followed Twitter, at least reasonably, even as a hobby, a lot of the stuff he said is not that surprising. Like we've seen the meme of home prices at 3 points in time, but the fact that someone in his seat is saying it to that audience is like, wow, this has escaped just the echo chamber of Bitcoin Twitter. Maybe Brady, just quick comment. He did make a comment about like real world assets and ownership being
Tokenized.
Tokenized.
Yep.
We could talk about that for a while, but I do just want to address that real quick. My personal view is I don't really see blockchains and digital assets and tokens addressing that. I don't think the issuers of these assets, whether it's a home, whether it's a car, whatever, I don't think they want the ownership to be on a blockchain, whatever that blockchain is. They want the edit access. Like they want it to be centralized. And same thing with the users. I don't think the users really want their ownership to be on a blockchain that's like very hard to edit and have someone go in there and say, no, this is actually who the owner is. So I'm kind of a seller on the whole real world assets will all trade on blockchains thesis. Sure. So just wanted to throw that out.
I have one caveat there. I would say not on a decentralized blockchain, but if a company wanted to adopt blockchain as a ledger, right? They could do that. You have a centralized ledger, but at that point, like, what's the point? Like the point of blockchain is to have a decentralized ledger. Otherwise, it's just really cumbersome and resource intensive. Just just use a database.
And in what you said, there's no need for a token either. There's no need for a token in a centralized blockchain.
Yeah, I will I'm certainly the furthest thing from a proponent of like enterprise blockchain or whatever, but I will say like equities settlement is a joke because of how fragmented the systems are between different firms. And so like you could, if you were really like steel manning and arguing, like you could probably say like there's some utility in just like a common standard for like Fidelity and Vanguard and private banks.
Maybe like a federated blockchain.
Yeah, like again, I'm not like pumping that. I'm just saying like, and John knows this from Wall Street, just like the back office of a lot of this shit is a joke.
Brandon, I saw you trying to jump in there.
Yeah, I'm fine with us like doing stock certificates in a consortium chain that probably could maybe work. As long as we don't talk about physical assets, that one drives me nuts. Yeah. We're not putting home ownership on a blockchain. No. That's entirely pointless. Like if you want to do like administrative title thing through a state thing, it's just a database. You're not doing anything. At the end of the day, if I come to your house or someone comes to your house and they force you out by gun, I'm living in your house, but the blockchain says you own the house, in which case it reduces down to property rights by the in which you live in.
Yeah,
so
100%.
At the end of the day, it's men with guns and a centralized database with some.
Yeah, exactly. Saylor's been throwing that around too, that, all this stuff's going to be tokenized. That is an interesting conversation. Bitcoiners have been debating this for a long time with shitcoiners. I think we've thought it through pretty well, and that we have the right position here. That it just doesn't make sense to use what the purpose of a blockchain as a decentralized database or ledger for a purpose like this, centralized purpose. Maybe if there's some kind of federated chain like Liquid, Liquid might be a good comparison here, where there might be some utility, but it wouldn't be decentralized. It'd be a number of institutions that are able to, make the blocks, right?
So something very cool just happened. See if we can share it. I put it in the chat, Brady. But so Senator Cynthia Lummis, who you all are familiar with, just posted a picture of herself with Scott Bessent, the incoming Treasury Secretary. And she said, Scott Bessent will be a champion for digital assets and a crucial ally in passing my strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now that this is public, I've been hearing some stuff about this for a while now. Here we go. And, now that she said it, I think we can talk about it a little more. Bessent is on board. The U.S. Treasury Secretary is on board with the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And what's interesting about this post, Lummis's reserve is different than an executive order reserve, right? Lummis's reserve is a bill that has to be passed, and that is buying quite a bit of Bitcoin. So that's kind of a new data point in that, if you just interpret off this post, that Bessent would not only support the executive order style, which would be a smaller size, but actually would support the Lummis style, which goes up to 1 million coins. It's a game changer.
Absolutely. Where are we going next, guys? You ready to move on? All right, we've got to talk about the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, which we've been talking about since the election, and we'll be talking about until it happens, and we'll be talking about after it happens, until they buy some and start putting into the Bitcoin, and then we'll be talking about it continuously after that, because it will be, in my opinion, the beginning of hyper-Bitcoinization or some form of it. So let's take a look at this week in Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. We'll start out with Dan Moorhead, another token billionaire in Bitcoin.
When you're the reserve currency of the world, you don't have somebody else's currency to save in. So the United States doesn't have another currency. It stores $600 billion in gold, which is a staggering amount. It's equivalent to 11 million years of American worker wages. That's crazy. Go to digital gold. Bitcoin, it's much better. And so I do think it's totally rational. The U.S. already owns 1% of the world's Bitcoins. Keep that. Increase that. So I do think it is actually a really good policy. There's a couple countries that already do own Bitcoin. It'd be great for the U.S. to get out in the lead. To the world, you don't have somebody else's currency to save in. So the United States doesn't have another currency. It stores.
I think it restarted.
Yep, it did. Sorry about that, guys. All right, Dan Moorhead. We've talked about this, I think, last week too. To me, the establishment we should look up. Stephen, can you look up, or one of the other guys, look up the poly market on BSR?
I have this numbers from last night,
okay.
So we can pull up the current. But so what's actually, people should understand this. The poly market is a very different market than the Kalshi market, which is a different betting platform. The reason I say that, the poly market bet is, will Trump do it in the first 90 days? Right. It's a timing bet more than anything else. Even if you think it's going to happen, well, is it going to happen in the first 90? Who knows? So the poly market odds are something like 30%. Okay. But again, it's the first 100 days. That's 25%. If you go to Kalshi, it's at 60%. Let me pull that up and see that that's gone up.
Okay. Yeah. So my point here is, I think if you go by the poly market, the establishment of the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve is about 25% priced in for the first 100 days, about 60% priced in for it happening at all, or maybe in 2025, I think it was, if I remember correctly. Yeah, in 2025. So 60, we'll just take 60% priced in at this point. The market thinks it's going to happen. 60% of the market thinks it's going to happen. Okay, so most of that has been reflected in that $30,000 run up after the election. So maybe there's another $20,000 left to run on that when it's announced, because expectations are there. To me, and I don't know if there's a betting market on this yet. To me, it's if the United States starts adding or buys a bunch of Bitcoin, because if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense to say we're going to DCA $1 billion a day or something like that to buy Bitcoin. It only makes strategic sense to come into the market and just rip it and say, we're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin and we're going to soak it all up. We don't care if it gets to $1 million, $2 million. We've got the money. We'll buy it. That's what the adding to the strategic reserve is what is going to tip us over into the suddenly, in my opinion.
100%. And so I'd actually even I'd want to kind of pick apart a couple of those things. There's also multiple different versions of the reserve. And you kind of were getting at that, but just, I would not say that the version where they buy Bitcoin is 60% priced in at all. If you're going to
not at all, not even close. Yeah.
So much higher. Maybe the version where they keep the coins, the Silk Road coins, even that, it's complicated. I think the market, despite the odds, has barely priced this thing in. I think there's a vague optimism that it sounds like something good's happening. But my honest belief is if we get a real strategic reserve, this thing goes to 500. I really think that.
Where's your head at this week, Brandon?
I don't think that Trump's going to have the Congress approval to do any big things next year. I just don't see it. There's a chance, but I feel like he's going to have to work really hard to get anything through Congress at this type of scale. And so I'd be bullish on whatever he can do from the executive branch, and I'd be pretty bearish on the Congress by end of the year.
I want to offer one thing here, and it actually comes from an astute listener, viewer of the show. This is a few weeks ago. He sent me an email to say we were having an interesting discussion about the strategic reserve. I think you could probably, like you said, Brady, this is going to be something we're going to talk about a lot. But he basically put it in comparison with gold. And what made me think of this again was what Dan Moorhead said. He was saying that the U.S. owns roughly, he said $600 billion, I think is the number, dollars worth of gold today. If the U.S. holds 200,000 Bitcoin, which I think is roughly what they hold at $100,000, that's $20 billion worth of Bitcoin. So the U.S. currently holds 30 times the amount of gold than they do Bitcoin. That's just one point of comparison to keep in mind there. But what the astute listener of the show had to say was if they try to get to a similar percentage ownership, and with gold, you always have to remember this is an estimate, right? But you assume it's close. If there's roughly 200,000 tons of gold, the U.S. claims to hold something like 8,000 tons, which is roughly 4%. And if the U.S. is going to say, hey, we want to have roughly 4% of Bitcoin reserves, again, these are just rough numbers, but it just puts it into context. That means they would have to 4x their Bitcoin that they hold. So that would mean 800,000 Bitcoin to get to 4% the supply of Bitcoin.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm a kind of a true believer on their ability to pull this off. I think the executive order, I think we all agree that the executive order exists for $10 billion, $20 billion, something in that size. They can pull that off. That's higher probability. For whatever reason, I don't know. I'm a true believer that they're able to, if they want to get the bill through, I really think they will. I mean, they do have leads in these, in the Senate and the House. They've got the Treasury on board. They've got supporters. There's a section of pro Bitcoin and crypto Dems that could probably be brought over.
Quite a few actually.
And I think a lot of these people have PTSD from watching all of their colleagues who opposed Bitcoin and crypto getting completely slaughtered in the election. And so what, are you really going to stick your neck out over, I don't know, we own some fucking asset from money we print? I don't know. I think they can get it through.
I think that's a really strong point. They want to have a counter force to their major L. I also can picture the news media machine kicking up the Trump just wants to enrich the early Bitcoiners. He owns it. This is increasing the wealth divide. And I could see the Dems in Congress say something like, we support crypto, but we don't support enriching the early people and Bitcoin's bloodthirsty billionaire brigade. You know what I mean?
It'll be a thing. Yeah. I mean, are we just enriching the, the early holders? Like that'll be a real thing. And it is on these advocates like us and them to communicate why this is actually good for the US. Matthew Pines has done the best work here. He's written literal dozens of pages of reports, both for these people and the public, talking about why there are geopolitical, financial, and strategic benefits to this that benefit all Americans in a very real way. But it is a thing we will have to talk about, that this isn't just like a money grab or a gift to the people that funded Trump's campaign. So that's real. That hurdle is real.
257 pro-crypto candidates were elected to the House. And the House has 435, I think, 435 voting members. So that's well over half of the House.
It's real.
Are pro-crypto candidates who are, and I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, people talked about the red wave, but it was a crypto sweep. I mean, I have to say crypto here because a lot of the money came from crypto companies, but it was a crypto sweep. So it's very strong signal that people want freedom to choose money. And there's a lot of pro-crypto legislators in the House and Senate now. 16 pro-crypto senators won. Of course, not the Senate doesn't go up. It's every 6 years. So there are quite a few senators who weren't in the election. I'll have to look it up, but it's more than 50 because there are at least several pro-crypto senators as well. So I would tip it over well over half of the Senate as well.
And just to reiterate this point, what's interesting is not only all the pro people that got in, but all the anti people that got out. So it's like, for every 1 point you won, you actually won 2 points because you not only got a pro in, you got an anti person out in many of these cases. And so much of the opposition, and then it creates this psychological effect of the people that are on the fence. They're not really sure. They saw how slaughtered all the haters got. You're not going to do it. It's such a losing. I talked about this, like when the election happened, like they lost their entire political accord for nothing. There was never any upside from opposing this stuff. No one's going to vote for you because you hate Bitcoin or you hate crypto. You're not going to get anywhere. And you just lost your entire career because of it for no upside. And there's not going to be a bunch of people rushing to replicate that strategy.
And the biggest one to note in the Senate was Sherrod Brown in Ohio lost. Remind me his name. Anyway, Sherrod was the chair of the head of the banking committee, right? Lost to a pro-crypto candidate. I'll look it up because he deserves to have his name mentioned here.
Bernie Moreno.
Yeah, Bernie Moreno.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stephen, the people you would get the votes of, it would be people like maybe Peter Schiff, Mike Green, Steve Hanke, Alex DeVries. Those are the people you were targeting if you were going to be anti-Bitcoin. Probably not a winning strategy.
Oh, so doubling down on the losers and the haters vote.
Didn't work. Bad news for the haters. Brady, can I just make a comment on...
You don't have to ask permission.
Okay. Shockingly, I want to talk about the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. No, I just want to make like a high level comment. A lot of what we're saying here is the probabilities of the most bullish case happening, which is they do say we're actively adding to this, the US government. But there's a great chart that Bitwise put out there, but it's based on the data that you could find at bitcointreasuries.net. And it just shows the Bitcoin holdings that we're aware of by government entity. And the US is the number one right now at just under 200,000. So the reason I think that's important to point out is I think it's massive. Even if they just say we're holding this, that 200,000 Bitcoin, $20 billion, the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the world, only if they say, hey, we're holding this as a strategic asset, that's the number one government entity holder of Bitcoin. That alone sends a signal to everyone else to say, hey, you guys are below us in the list. We don't even have to add more Bitcoin. Like that alone is ridiculously bullish. And if you talk about them adding to it, that's just like another level.
You're right. Even just saying the United States saying, hey, we've created this Bitcoin strategic reserve. We've got this 200,000 Bitcoins. We're going to put it in there and we're going to hold it. That's a signal. Okay. Russia. Okay. China. Okay. Go ahead.
I just looked up the chart you sent, John. US, China, UK, and it would be Germany at 50,000 coins, but they liquidated them in the summer. So it feels like we should have like a Twitter bot that once a month says how much Bitcoin Germany sold.
Yeah.
And how much they would be up.
They've lost. Yeah.
It would be fourth in the world.
How much did they sell? Was it something insane? Like 15,000? Yeah.
Not to mention they blew up their entire economy and like 300 to 400-year-old companies went bankrupt in the last 2 years.
Yikes.
Can you imagine fumbling the bag that hard?
It's they've really been off sides. Not a good time. Not a good time for honestly the whole EU, to be honest, man. I wish you guys luck. I wish you guys luck.
And to your point, John, just just talking about it, just the promise made by Trump, and then the win has other countries considering it. So we've got lots of Putin was talking about it last week. This is fantastic. So a Japanese lawmaker, Satoshi Hamada, an absolute champion. Can't wait to learn more about him. Just came on my radar today, but he is urging Japan to consider an SBR. So he's brought that into the lawmaking bodies in Japan. So yeah, that's fascinating. We had Texas also announce that they have submitted a bill for an SBR as well. So the SBR meme is spreading. We're seeing it being taken up. So it'll be interesting to watch those conversations progress. But John, to your point, if the United States does follow through with the establishment of the BSR, I think we'll see other countries thinking about it now, moving a lot faster, and countries who aren't thinking about it starting to.
Small shout out to the EU, and it's also a news item, so I could just hit it real quick. At least one part of the EU, a small part, the Czech Republic, you guys may have seen this, they came out with legislation that said if you hold Bitcoin for 3 years, there's no capital gains on it. So, there are some bright spots within the EU. And just to contrast that, about a month ago, Italy came out and said they're thinking about legislation it was like a 42% special tax on Bitcoin and digital assets. So different countries are going to have different legislations about this, but I thought the Czech Republic one was at least worth noting.
Absolutely. No, it's a big deal. And something I want to echo on the SBR, I agree wholeheartedly with your point that even if they just hold it, it's a big deal. And people have talked about the game theory on this thing a lot, but I'm actually more bullish what financial companies do in that scenario than other nation states. I think the biggest upside is like if the US does this and say, hey, we're holding this asset or we're buying this asset, Goldman, JP Morgan, like all the money, all the wealth managers, all the private banks, the investment banks, the family offices. It's like this thing is suddenly endorsed as a asset of material importance. And even if they just go from a 0% allocation to a 1% allocation, that's game changing.
Don't you think, Stephen, that those entities already have that signal, have what they need to act?
I don't, honestly. I mean, yes, I just think they're, honestly, I'd like to hear John's opinion here. I actually, because he worked at Goldman. My base case and heuristic is that these people are so slow to move, they haven't yet. But how would you answer that question?
Well, it's funny timing because, this literally, I just saw it as a news item. Like it was posted an hour or two ago. So the four of us didn't see it as we were preparing content. But there's this guy, either Matthew McDermott or Michael McDermott, and he's the head of the digital assets team at Goldman. And he was doing a CNBC interview, and I just saw the 20-second clip, but he's talking about major multinational companies putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and he said it's conceivable. So now he is the head of digital assets. You have to remember that. He's, you know, a little bit incentivized to talk up this kind of stuff. It would be more impactful if an asset allocator said, you know, that we really think this makes sense. And on that note, I think one of the things we're going to talk about today is the BlackRock explicit recommendation for 2%. Yeah. We didn't even get to that yet. World's largest asset manager is now explicitly saying 2% Bitcoin makes sense. I'm still in the camp that, to your point, Quittem, I think they have enough to consider it. You know, we're past the stage of Bitcoin's going to zero. It's a Ponzi scheme. Don't touch it. I think we're past that, thankfully. But these companies, you have to remember that they are slow to move. They have to go through committees. They have to get buy-in. A lot of these companies have been wildly successful with nothing to do with Bitcoin, right? Like, look at the annual return of any of the big tech companies over the last 2 decades. It's phenomenal. It's like 20 to 25% per year. These companies are doing very well for their shareholders. It's a hard sell to tell them, hey, you should also take on a Bitcoin strategy. And the Microsoft news this week is pretty good evidence of that. Less than 1% of the shareholders voted for the Bitcoin strategy. So I think we're moving along, but it's at the stage of, okay, this is serious enough that we'll consider it, but they're still kind of far away from actually getting to the finish line.
Makes sense. Quick clarification. Is it 0.5% of shares outstanding, meaning every shareholder is weighted? So it could have been popular on a per shareholder basis and still been 0.5% because the large shareholders voted no. Right?
I think that's right. I think it's number of shares. So it could be that like thousands of tiny shareholders voted yes, and like 1,000.
That's what I thought.
Said no.
Data abuse all over Twitter.
Well,
shocking.
Shocking, right? Someone was asking about stock to flow in the chat. Speaking of data abuse.
Yeah. Also, there's a few questions about the quantum thing that's been making the rounds. I'll kick a short answer there because I've gotten this week. So Google was in the news for this new quantum chip breakthrough, and it seems like it's a material breakthrough. There's 2 things to understand about the quantum story. Even with this chip, we're still like a decade away of it posing a threat to the 2 main encryption types that matter in BTC. It is not close. The second thing to understand, solutions exist today. We just need to fork them in. So there are existing encryption methods that would be resistant to quantum computers. It's not a hard thing to solve, but it is a thing we have to do. So solutions are there, and it's a long time away. The only thing we need to decide is like, what is the implementation we want to bring in? And there are some challenges with upgrading very old addresses from the past, including Satoshi's coins. So there's a few things, but
it has and is being thought about and discussed, and there are solutions in the Bitcoin dev mailing list and GitHub and stuff like that. To get in, if you wanted to really dive into the details, but it would take, so Google has a quantum computer now. I think it has 112 qubits. I heard something that would take like, I mean, many orders of magnitude more qubits in order to start being able to break SHA-256, which has more numbers than, let's say more addresses, you can take that as an example, than atoms in the universe. So you're talking about a lot of computing power, even quantum computing power. So yeah, we have time and it is being discussed. There are ways to protect. There are quantum proof hash algorithms.
And zooming out really quick, if this occurs, Bitcoin is not the unique vulnerability here. This means that a whole bunch of modern information infrastructure is about to get pwned. So this is not a Bitcoin problem. This is a banking problem. This is
everything.
Problem. This is a credit card problem.
Anything that uses cryptography.
World leader sending a fake message to start a war problem. This is a systemic problem. I don't know why Bitcoin takes the heat for consuming energy,
Yeah.
or for all quantum, or for
Right.
wealth inequality. The list goes on.
Yeah, when in fact fiat money is the cause of many of the things that Bitcoin is blamed for. Not quantum, but definitely wealth inequality and housing prices. Okay, let's see. We've got 10 minutes left. I know Stephen wanted to get to Eric Trump's speech, so let's pull up Stephen's tweet, and I'll let you tee this up.
Yeah, so Eric Trump gave a speech at Bitcoin, the Middle East conference that Bitcoin Mag did. And again, like this isn't, I'm not coming at this from a political angle or any sort of endorsement or non-endorsement, just kind of talking about how this impacts Bitcoin in the market. I thought this speech was an incredible milestone, or a signpost, I should say. And it was a few things. One is that Eric gets up there. He once again reiterates that Donald is going to do the Bitcoin reserve. Now,
you're on a first name basis now? I didn't know that.
I can neither confirm nor deny. But he gets up there and he says that Trump is going to do this. And so I think the skepticism that people would have, or the fear or the bear case, is that like, he talked about it on the campaign trail, but now that he's won the election, like it doesn't matter. He doesn't have to like keep those promises. He can just kind of go do whatever. He already won the election. But both Trump himself and Eric, they continue to talk about it. Like he talks about it at the stock exchange, and Eric talks about it on stage. They're being very public and very upfront, out in front, that they're going to do this. And so this increases your probability that they are serious about this. This is going to happen. And then he goes on to talk about making Bitcoin tax free. To me, this is a long shot. Like this one is like pie in the sky for me, but you know, interesting that they're talking about it. It certainly signifies something. I don't think it signifies we're going to get that done, but you know, it's interesting. And then finally, like, I could be wrong here, but my experience watching that speech was somebody that like actually likes Bitcoin. Like there was an authentic, I think, appreciation for what Bitcoin is that I honestly didn't expect to see. When, you know, Trump gave his speech in Nashville, obviously it was super material and impactful that he was doing that, but you could tell he didn't really understand the finer points of it. It was obvious that like he didn't really get it. He was just kind of down for the, you know, the group and the cause. Listening to Eric's talk, I found somebody that was much more interested and sophisticated in their discussion of it, and
He didn't seem to be pandering.
He didn't seem to be pandering. Like,
right.
He seemed to actually like this thing. And there's these little nuggets in it where he talks about calling Donald Trump when it breaks 100K. So he's picking up the phone and he's calling his father when Bitcoin does this thing. Like this is a sign of like a real interest, and that's a sign. That's a signpost.
Should we watch a piece of it?
Shoot.
But now more than ever before, now after everything I've witnessed, having maybe the greatest look behind the curtains of anybody on earth into what the systems truly are, how the systems are manipulated, Bitcoin is actually proving to be the greatest complement to the hard assets our family loves so much. You know, just like real estate, obviously Bitcoin's scarce. There's only 21 million. I don't need to tell anybody in this room that. You know, name another commodity that's capped. Name another commodity that as prices go up, it's not further exploited. Guys, if gold ever went to $20,000, you'd be tearing down this building. You'd be looking in the concrete pillars over there. You'd be trying to mine gold. You'd be changing the supply dynamics. With Bitcoin, you can't. You know, with Bitcoin, Bitcoin's supply is capped. That scarcity, that hard limit, it makes it incredibly valuable, especially as these assets are being purchased in the billions. That's
yeah, something weird with restreams happening where it's like restarting the videos in the middle of the videos. But that gives you a taste of it. You can find the clip on Twitter. He does finish up by saying that he thinks Bitcoin's going to $1 million. So it's very confident about that. So that's his price target. I mean, yeah, look, I agree with Steven's sentiment that this is, more proof that what the promises that have been made, which, like I said, are pandering until they happen, will actually happen. So we're getting more signal that BSR will be established, and maybe beyond that. Any other comments on Eric Trump? And then I'll pull up this Dalio tweet for Brandon.
I'll just say real quick, I love what Eric Trump said there, because there's a line I've tried to use with people over many years now. Friends, family members end up figuring out that I'm favorable on Bitcoin, and a lot of times they'll start the conversation with me. And one of the ways I've tried to get them to think about it is I say, tell me an asset that you can own some percentage of it today and be confident that you own that same percentage of it 1 year, 10 years, 100 years from now. And it usually gets the gears turning a little bit. And their answers are typically, well, real estate. But even they recognize it's like, well, you can build more real estate. Then they might say, okay, Miami beachfront real estate, that's more scarce. They might say gold, but Eric Trump mentioned the things about gold. So, he's hitting on Bitcoiner talking points. That's pretty incredible. And then just one other quick comment, Macroscope on Twitter. Yeah. He made the point that it wasn't just Eric Trump making interesting and positive statements about Bitcoin, but Paul Manafort made a comment about Bitcoiners celebrating much higher than 100K soon. And then there's another guy, Steve Witkoff, who's apparently like a Trump confidant. I don't actually know that name, but he made some other bullish comments about Bitcoin. So there's a lot of signals here. It's not just, if it was just Eric Trump talking about Bitcoin at a conference, that still would be a big deal. But I just want to make the point that there are other people talking about this.
100%. And more, honestly. There are a number of, I think, highly motivated parties that really want to see this.
So yet another token billionaire who has become coming around on Bitcoin slowly but surely is Ray Dalio. He founded, what the heck? Sorry, guys. There we go. He founded Bridgewater, wealth management firm. And he recommended it at a speech in the Middle East, or yesterday, the day before, for the first time, that he recommends holding some Bitcoin. He still likes gold better, but he does recommend owning a bit of Bitcoin because there is an imminent debt money problem. He's been talking about this for years. So Brandon wanted to tee this up. So what you got, man?
Yeah, I think first it's good to see Ray keep inching closer to Bitcoin. I respect his mind, and he's got a long history of success. So that's cool to see. A lot of people respect him. But why I wanted to bring it up is the red dragon in the background of that image. Obviously, that's China. And Ray's recent book is all about the changing world order. And he's essentially looking out through the last 500-600 years, looking at empires rising and falling. He paid some analysts to look at education and all these different KPIs essentially for a country. And he tracks our decline going down and China going up. And I think that's just totally wrong. And I want to just take a couple of these head on, and this is going to be a pretty pro-America little rant here. But Dalio points out things like anytime political units grow, they become decadent and they slowly decline, right? As all males in the universe know about the empire. In our free time, that's what we study. So, you've heard this story many times before. Yeah, you have too much debt, you devalue the currency, internal division, you start to tear each other apart, right? These things feel familiar to America, right? And I would even say rewind 90 days. I think that I would maybe lean towards Dalio being correct, even though I think we have a good shot at pulling it off. Now, I think MAGA, Maha, all the energy around the new administration, I think that actually is just entirely derailing Dalio's thesis. I think we have a real shot here to make the next 100 years the fourth American Republic and sort of reboot this thing with OG American values. Part of that story is Bitcoin. Part of that story, let's just go through it. Becoming decadent and decline. Yes, we are absolutely doing that. Okay, we've got a Doge department. We got people going after lawfare. We got people trying to turn off the weaponized financial system. Hollywood is being no one cares about Hollywood anymore, so they're kind of shines off. We can clean all that up. Too much debt, okay, yes, but if we work out our spending, we maybe put some Bitcoin in the reserve, we juice growth for the next 10, 20 years, we bring more energy, blah, 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 we have a shot there. Internal division, yeah, this one's really bad. I use the fourth turning lens often to look through this on like generational cohorts and where we are with that. That's real. However, I would say we've hit a major vibe shift here. And I think the massive change that I see around bringing cohesion back to our country is all this talk about transparency. So I think that there's a lot of mistrust on both sides of the political aisle now. And I think that COVID and the stuff around there is part of it. I think there's a whole bunch embedded, but I think the new administration and everybody that I see on Twitter, they're talking about max transparency to the point where flirting with social issues because it's too much transparency. But I think that radical transparency gives us a chance to wipe the slate clean, see reality, shake your neighbor's hand and sort of rebuild from the ground up. And I think if we don't go radical transparency, I think there's going to be latent resentment from the last period of time that we're not going to clean up. And I don't think we'll actually be able to resolve those issues. So I'm very bullish. And yeah, I mean, America, we produce our own food, we produce our own energy. We have the best capital markets. We have the most Bitcoin. We have the most Bitcoin companies. We're on the track right now. And I think that, yeah, that's all I gotta say. That sorry, haters. It's gonna be another century of American exceptionalism.
We're actually the #1 producer of Americans too, and that that's really appreciated, man. I mean, we produce more Americans than any other country, and these guys are great.
You have a source for that?
Are you familiar with in Russia? I'm going to probably butcher this pronunciation, but perestroika and glasnost. Yeah, so it's like truth and transparency, or truth and reconciliation, or like transparency and reconciliation, or whatever. And this was the Gorbachev, I think. Yeah, and so he comes in after like the USSR and all the communism and all the terror, and that was his whole thing. It was like transparency and reconciliation, I believe so, and it was this huge focus. And there's like a vibe of that right now where it's like, we need to, like, that is how you rebuild trust. That is how you restore the bonds of a fractured nation. And like, we'll see what actually happens, and we'll see what actually gets pulled off, and we'll see, like, that is the way, that is the path. And I hope that we see that.
It's the fourth turning, the 80-year cycle. Everyone loses trust in institutions, and in the next phase of the cycle, you rebuild.
Guys, Trump just announced he's going to eliminate daylight savings time.
That's a win right there.
I mean, my God, I hope so. That is a pet issue.
That is a win.
How are you complaining down by the equator? I'm in the North Country. It's going to be dark in like 15 minutes.
Yeah. We gotta make sunshine great again.
Okay, well, hey, daylight savings time no longer. R.I.P. R.I.P. We were heading that direction for a long time.
I know.
Well, good conversation, fellas. We're about at time. I know that we're all extremely busy with our work at Swan. It's fun to be able to get together and hang out in the midst of a work day. This is work, but doesn't feel like it, so that's nice. We got to close out with Saifedean Moose, our carnivore Bitcoin champion. Went on CNBC this morning on Squawk Box Morning Joe's MSNBC with Joe. Yeah, he was on Squawk Box with Joe. So let's check it out.
There's characteristics of why gold for 4,000 years has been used to represent value, but it has nothing to do with what it's used for.
No, it stores value well because it's very difficult to increase the supply of gold. It's very difficult to increase the...
This video is probably going to mess up again. Just a heads up. We're going to watch it until it does.
Every year, the supply of gold goes up at only around 1.5 to 2%. And so that means that people who hold it as money end up doing very well for themselves, and people who hold other things don't do well. And that is true for gold, and that's what made gold money for the whole world practically at the beginning of the 20th century. Then governments come about, and they use their debt as money. And since then, The average over the last 60 years or so, between 1960 and 2020, for 60 years, the average fiat currency grew in supply at around 14% per year, or overall fiat currencies grew in supply at around 14% per year. So we went from 1.5% to 14%, about 10-fold increase in the supply growth rate. And 14% per year means that on average you lose half of the value that's stored in money over 5 years. So you lose half of the value of your money over 5 years. That's the average fiat experience. Of course, some currencies are better than the average, like the US dollar and euro. They only increase at around 7-8% per year. Some currencies are a lot worse. They increase at 20, 50, maybe 100 sometimes % per year. But on average, it's just continuously increasing in supply, so its value declines. And because its value declines, that incentivizes everybody to A, not save, and B, take on a lot of debt. And that's why everybody is in debt. And that's what Bitcoin fixes. If we go back to having a hard money, where money is no longer debt, we no longer need to be monetizing debt. We no longer need to get everybody to become a debt slave in order for us to have a form of money. We have a form of money that is just a commodity that doesn't require anybody to get into debt for it.
Woo, we made it all the way through. Wow, it is really cool to see Safe up there schooling the financial world on the country's most watched daily financial show about Bitcoin. And he was just, as usual, lucid, and I think that was a great delivery.
Yeah, man. It's there are going to be a lot more Bitcoiners in the media this next year.
Indeed, indeed. All right, guys. Till next week. I think it'll be maybe the last one for the year. We have to talk about whether or not we're going to do one right at the end of the year. But we will have a holiday show next week on the 20th. Who knows what's going to happen in between now and then? We just rescued the world from daylight savings time, so there's that.
Big things are afoot.
Are you going to go like dance in the sun right now and do a little celebration?
I mean, it's almost 3:30, so I do that every day.
It's time for instead of afternoon tea, it's the afternoon sun dance. Brandon's got some kind of crazy device. You should pull that out, Brandon. What is it? Yeah, you showed it before we started.
Okay.
What is this thing? I still don't get it.
This is a super high-powered red light device by Hoogla or something. Free ad from Hoogla.
Turn it on.
It's powering the baby up.
Woo!
There we go.
Yeah, cover your eyes.
That looks legit.
Very powerful.
Okay,
By
what
the
do you
way,
use it for?
You know how Bitcoiners will make it in 2025? When Safedine's on mainstream media discussing stainless steel versus cast iron. That's when you know
Ryan, how many chairs are you sitting on right now? One chair. How many shirts are you wearing? One shirt. Do you need to wear two shirts? No, you only wear one shirt. I'm
wearing one shirt. I have no chair. No chair.
I actually tweeted your comment. Go to my Twitter. You'll see it.
Oh, nice. Awesome. All right, gents. We'll sign off. Thank you all very much. Any final words?
You can only look at Brandon's red light with your laser eyes on. Otherwise, it could be dangerous. Just be careful.
This is true.
All right.
All right, fellas.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Check out Swan at swan.com and search Swan Bitcoin in the App Store. We've made it as easy and fast and simple as possible for you to onboard your friends and family this holiday season. So when they come asking you about Bitcoin, how's your trade, let them know it's going really well. And then have them pull out their phones, go to the App Store, search Swan Bitcoin. Within 2 or 3 minutes, no joke, you'll even have your grandma in 2 or 3 minutes onboarded and buying her first Bitcoin in just a few minutes. It's an awesome experience. You don't have to scan your face. You don't have to bring out IDs and take photos and all that stuff. You can stand right next to your family or friend and just get them onboarded, start them stacking sats. Then they'll be receiving education from us via email. Of course, we have the shows. We have a Bitcoin course at swan.com/welcome that you can refer them to as well. So think of us when your friends and family come asking you about Bitcoin over the holiday season. I hope you'll see that the experience is fantastic and you'll make some new Bitcoiners along with us. We'll help you on the way there. So we'll see you all next week. And until then, thanks and keep stacking.